Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Broken Worship Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Mitchell. I have a very exciting episode for you guys today. I have had the privilege of being friends with my guest today for quite a while. He is an owner of a local bookstore and bar called Full Circle Book Co-op. Full Circle Book Co-op is an incredible business that has a very friendly, encouraging, welcoming, and inclusive environment. It's such a chill place to have a drink, visit with people, and it's a place that encourages creativity and self-expression. I love how focused they are on writers, poets, art, and artists of any kind. Full Circle Book Co-op is a strong advocate for inclusion and for fighting for the rights and the inclusion of marginalized communities. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome my friend Sean Lidster to the podcast. Thank you for coming to the podcast.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. So first of all, I want to thank you for all you do for the poetry and art community in Sioux Falls and the surrounding areas. I want to thank you for providing a space and environment that encourages writing, poetry, and art. I have been very grateful for the open mic events that I have been able to attend at Full Circle and even being able to host broken worship events at Full Circle. So now I want to dig into with you a few topics with you today. And I want to start with some questions about Full Circle Book Co-op and your personal inspirations for literature, poetry, and art. Would you be willing to talk about the beginning and the journey of your love of writing, poetry, and art?
Yeah, I suppose it all started with music. Um, I got into music when I was really young. Um, Around 7 years old, I became really fanatical about music, and then just dove in, and then got into like punk rock music, and so started with like Alice Cooper and rock and roll, and then went into sort of the punk rock scene. Um, and I think that there's a lot of art that's involved with that too. But the thing that really got to me, especially with the punk rock stuff, was the lyrics. What they were saying, because you had the energy of the music, um, but especially with some of the more like abrasive stuff, a lot of it kind of it's a lot of similar in its sort of movement. But the lyrics then is what kind of give it its extra like punch and that kind of thing. So I
Oh,
always kind of studied the lyrics and like would read along every time I buy a new record, you're reading the lyric sheets and seeing what artwork they give you and all that. So that was the big inspiration for why I started to love words, I suppose. I used to read and stuff back in the day too, always enjoyed reading things, but that sort of like entrance into the field of poetry, I think, stems from music. And then, I mean, then I actually got into. There was a really good local music scene where I'm from, and I got into that when I was about 15 years old. A lot of people were that I admired, were a few years older than me, so got to kind of like check them out, studied their lyrics and what they were all about, and so that was another thing, just being a part of that whole wild scene. And then, a lot of things there, we were all DIY, so we were recording our music, we were creating our own artwork, we were writing our own songs, making our own little studios. And so a lot of the stuff that I learned there, I still use today, which I think is really important. That's why I think, I encourage. Well, I know we'll talk more about Full Circle, but we're an all ages space, and that's one of the things is because I got to live that life since I was like 15, and
yeah.
you can't go into a bar or something to watch a band until you're 21. That's 6 years of your life, that
Yeah.
formative.
Yeah.
So to me, that's quite important, which we can get into. But
Yeah, I definitely agree. Um I was in a local I was a vocalist of a local metal band. And if I didn't have that space where I was, writing with a band and write, I always loved lyrics, but being able to perform that on stage and being around the music community, it really opens your eyes to a lot of shit. And like, you grow the love in that music community. And then after that, kind of, after after we did the band for a few years, and after that I just it grew into love of he grew into poetry and literature, so I definitely see where you're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing with it, it's a lot of times you kind of like I know it was for me. It's changed now, but when I was that age, you're used to growing up in a place, so you kind of take the place for granted. And I think a lot of teenagers and that sort of era, you're like, oh, there's nothing to do here, because you're just used to it. So it kind of gets you into that mode of like making your own fun, being creative, putting on your own shows. Like you don't have to rely on somebody else to make your life interesting, that kind of thing. So there's like big life lessons that came from the whole thing.
And I want to thank you, because I know you're more you said you're more punk rock, but my heart is in the like metalcore stuff, and you're bringing in metal bands in the little bookstore, and I always thought that was pretty
Yeah,
badass.
it's quite funny. We get a lot of touring acts come through, and they walk in and they're like, "Oh," when they said it's in a bookstore, there's like I didn't know to think, but they're usually quite pleasantly surprised, at least so far. But yeah, it's kind of a nice little angle, I suppose.
Yeah. So, but so it started with music, and then that just kind of developed into poetry. And what about more literature?
Yeah.
How did that you get into that?
Well, like I said, I always read, and then I I remember in school once, we were supposed to have this like reading session, and probably about 13, 12 or something like that. I don't know. So they've got this like age adequate book, and but I'd snuck Silence of the Lambs into the middle of the book, so I was actually reading, I was reading this like adult literature stuff. So, and I got caught reading it, and they weren't happy, but that kind of thing. I've always gravitated to stories and that kind of stuff, and then the imagination that comes with reading. But I think, um, well, just to finish on the literature part, I think what I like most is like nonfiction. I like stories about people's lives, especially like eccentric people, like artists. And you take something like the beat poetry scene, and the way that they live their lives, for better or worse, they were attempting something. Or you take a look at like the Montmartre scene of 1920s Paris and what they were trying to do with things. And I just find that stuff so interesting because it's kind of goes back to that making your own fun thing, of like you don't have to. There are ways to make your life interesting, and I think inspiration from biographies or books written from people's maybe perspectives that are not your average perspective, I think just helps like pull that apart a little bit so you can kind of see what you can do as well.
Yeah, I know for me, so if people who followed Broken Worship are listening for a while, they know that I've struggled with a speech impediment, and that was that kind of fed into like my learning, and like I had more than most. I had to have my parents help me with reading assignments and stuff like that. But I always respected readers. I always wanted to be a reader, and especially in high school, it's like I just want to. I want to be someone that, instead of turning on the fucking TV all the time, I want to read. I want to be able to read for like not only entertainment to expand my mind and stuff, and like so um, I challenged myself to read the biggest book I knew of, It by Stephen King.
Yeah.
And that was a really good book. But after you get to the end of it, it's like, holy shit, I did it. And then the next book that's like a regular sized book was felt like a breeze.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
not that I'm saying I'm probably one of the slowest readers I know, but I feel like I can do it now. And now, I've wrote books, and I love being in the literature, poetry community. So, yeah.
You have quite a lot of books, you know. How many?
Yeah. Yeah. So, a lot of them are kind of, smaller poetry, but I did get one full size book, which I'm super stoked about, and still continuing writing. So, yeah. But anyways, so what inspired you and motivated you to start this unique business of Full Circle Book Co-op?
Well, I suppose going back to when I first, well, back in Wales, I'll start from the start. Um, when I got to being in bands and I was writing lyrics and stuff like that, and then I came to this point where I wanted to play in other people's bands that I loved their lyrics. So I stopped writing lyrics altogether, just so I wanted to play other people's music, you know. But I still kept writing. And then there was a close family friend called Andrew Perry who um, I found out he had a chapbook of poetry that he'd kind of just, from a little local press that he'd done back in the day, or maybe it was more recent, but so I kind of found out about that, and we became friends, sharing poetry. He's passed away since, but we became. He was the second person I think to see me ever born, so I've known him my whole life. But we just got closer there towards the end through poetry. So then I started putting on some poetry events in like coffee shops and bars and that kind of thing back in Wales, which which was a lot of fun. And then I met my wife who is from here, but she studied in Wales. So I moved out here like 11 years ago now. And then I didn't know anybody in the scene. I didn't know any of the poets. I knew some musicians, but I was really interested in hearing what the poets were like. So I was just one day I was researching online and um, found out about this poet who was like a national touring poet who wanted to play in Sioux Falls because he was doing these. He wanted to play every state, um, and he didn't have a venue. And it was kind of serendipitous that I just stumbled upon him. I'd never heard of him before. So okay, so I reached out and I said I can put you on. I didn't know anywhere or anyone, but there's a way. So they said okay. So then we did Black Sheep Coffee. I don't know if you remember that
Oh,
place.
I loved that place. Yeah.
And I kept asking around, like, oh, so who do I get? Who's the poets? And 90% of people were like, oh, Charles Luden, Chuck Luden. So he's like, yeah, one of the staples of town. And then I just did a couple of search posts online in different forums, and based upon that, a friend reached out, and then became friend, and then we started up a thing called the Blot Collective, which was a non-profit for spoken word. So we'd put on like events and all kinds of cool stuff based around spoken word. At the same time, in another weird serendipitous way, Jason Kurtz had started South Dakota Rights, a nonprofit for the written word. So we had spoken word, he had written word, and we were collaborating quite a lot, on events. And we just got to talking one day, and he, he kind of brought up that we it's not about making money, but the point being, we would make like $30 on the door, but we're looking at the bar, and the bar's making $1,000, and we just lost the local books, the used bookstore downtown. So he just kind of formulated this plan and sort of asked around, and then he finally like asked me. We were having a couple of beers once, and he's like, "Oh, you want to kind of start something?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not?" like,
Yeah.
like that was the only thing. It was just saying yes to it. And that got the ball rolling. We searched for like a year and a half. We kind of like planned out what we wanted it to be. I wanted it to be like a space for a collective space for the creatives because there wasn't anywhere. Lots of creatives in town, lots of events happening, but there wasn't anywhere at that time because Black Sheep had finished to actually just congregate. Or you turn up there 2 in the afternoon and you're going to meet someone even if you don't know them, it's going to be someone interesting there. So that was the idea. We wanted to make that space, and then so yeah, we were already doing events. The bar was already clearly going to make money, and then so we started the idea of the bookshop as the third like part of that sort of tripod. Um, we collect and we put out some calls for books. And within the year of us looking for a venue, we had Jason's garage was filled to the like dangerously full, like 8 foot tall stacks of boxes. You couldn't move in there. And then we had to rent a storage place, So eventually, we got into the spot where we are now, and it all just kind of worked out. The community we had no money, we had no like nothing, like I didn't own a car, like I kind of own a car now, but I didn't at the time. None of us owned a house, it was that kind of stuff. So we went in this with nothing, put out a Kickstarter for like, I think it was $10,000 we asked for. Um, I think within a month we ended up getting about 12 or $13,000. Plus we had all the inventory. Um, so it was just strange. It was a lot of work, but it all just came together like like without too much thinking on my behalf at least. It all just kind of like came into fruition. So that yeah, I mean the inspiration for me was everything that led up to that. It was 7 years old discovering Alice Cooper. It was my old man recording uh, vinyls for me on tape because he knew that I would break the vinyls. And so, it was every step of the process that led to it, and continues to as well. It keeps evolving as we go along.
That's really awesome. I love that. That's yeah. So my next question is, what are some of your favorite authors, poets, or musicians or bands?
Okay. So like I said, I kind of gravitate more towards sort of stories about people. Um, but I'd say the biggest influence on my sort of literary life, I suppose, would be like the Beat Generation people, especially like the poets and that kind of stuff. Um, um, there's too many to name. I mean,
Yeah,
there's like the big
that's a
four, but
tough
then
question.
but there's
Yeah.
so many more there. But then, I mean, as far as poets go, exactly. I mean, Dylan Thomas is my all-time favorite poet. He's a um, Welsh poet back in sort of the 50s era. Um, so there's something about his work that just like elevates both life and death. There's a lot of death like poems that are like relate to death in certain ways, and just kind of like when I've lost people in life, I can look to his poetry and go, and it takes away some of not the heaviness. You still feel the heaviness, but it gives something to the heaviness, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But I love Dylan Thomas. And then, yeah, as far as authors, I mean, I gravitate more to like biographies about people like Van Gogh, Marcel Duchamp, like the weird artists and eras of time, like I said with Paris and now that 1950s New York scene has always intrigued me. The 60s in both America and the UK, what became possible, and actually, a lot of people say that it failed, but it really, in a lot of ways, it carried on in a lot of cool things, especially like culture.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like all that. Musically though, I mean, punk rock was the biggest influence. Um, Bands like The Clash, if you're talking about lyrics, I mean, The Clash and Joe Strummer. Um, I love the X-Ray Specs. I love yeah, like the Sex Pistols, Iggy Pop. The big one for me these days is probably the Pogues, and I've always loved the Pogues, but now I'm in a band called the Shirks that we formed for St. Patrick's Day a few like 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh,
Uh,
dope.
so yeah, it was fun. It was just me and my buddy Rex, just kind of goofy. But now we formed into like a full band.
What
Uh,
do you play? Are you what?
in that, I play guitar and do some vocals.
Oh, cool.
And then we've got an accordion player, a keyboard player, a drummer, and a bassist. So it's like a real band now. And we started
Oh,
like
yeah.
writing our own tunes, and but we've kind of formed with this kind of like Irish thing in mind. So that's always fun to go back to as well. That's kind of big part of what I like now. Also things like, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, Leonard Cohen, some of the more depressing stuff,
Yeah.
well as the heavy stuff. So
Yeah, hell yeah. Um, so my next question is, how has your outlook or view of the importance of literature, poetry, or art of any kind changed or grown through the process of running Full Circle Book Co-op?
good question. Um, I think I've met so many poets and artists and musicians and all members of the fringe way of living, and they're my friends, including yourself. And we just congregate there and we talk like weird ideas. There's people painting murals. There's people uh, we've had like strange DIY fashion show. Like I don't know. It's one big creative hub. So I wouldn't say that it's not so much the books and sort of the literature that I'm reading or that I've read that influenced that anymore. It did at the start for sure, but now it's just the people and that sort of collective experience, and it's become more of a almost communal thing. A lot of us work together. We all get paid the same. It's not like your average hierarchical business. So and that very intentionally so. And I'd like to go even further into that in the future and really
I
make it
think
a collective space.
Yeah, I think community is so damn important, especially in this world where so many people feel alone and addicted to their phones, and having a place to actually go and share your heart is so, and I gotta think that's been really impactful for you, and being you know, a head kind of head guy and one of the head guys in that. So that's awesome that you kind of helped create that space. So,
Yeah, well, it's if it would be me and Jason sitting there having a pint with each other if it
yeah,
wasn't for everybody else who's turning up. So
yeah.
we had a punk rock night on Friday just gone, and it was sort of it was for a fundraiser for Planned Parenthood, and it was like we haven't been that busy since our opening weekend. We were at capacity at 6:30 in
Oh,
in the afternoon, so it was just kind of like, and I knew about 90, I knew about 5% of the people there. It was probably about 95. I had no idea who they were. So that was really cool and exciting to know that there's more out there to kind of welcome in and hopefully provide a space for.
awesome. Yeah. Do you, so this might be a tough one if you, but yeah, anyways, do you have any standout moments at Full Circle that have really inspired you, whether that be with people that you have met, stories that you have heard, or personal experiences?
I would say the big one, I mean, it happens every time I'm there. There's always something, or I hear something, someone tells me something. But I mean, the biggest one was when we had the bricks thrown through the window,
Yeah.
and um, it was sort of in the height of that sort of the beginning of Trump era one, and yeah, we got a few attacks for different things, but this one, like, yeah, we had a brick about this big thrown through the panel of the window. Um, we didn't know about it, because we were kind of new back then. So a friend got in touch the next day, told us about it. Then another friend who had moved, I think, to Florida maybe or somewhere down that way. heard about it and started us up a GoFundMe. So we didn't even like start that up. We didn't ask for it or anything. We were just cleaning up the mess at that point, you know. And then yeah, so the community he asked for $1,000 because that's he researched what the window would cost to be refilled. We ended up within a day or two, or maybe like a week, getting like over $4,000 in just pure community outpouring for the place.
Wow.
To me, that's like unheard of. You know, I mean, it's you might get something, you know, if you're just if you're a food place or something. But I mean, I can't imagine that happening at some big box store or something. You know,
Yeah.
people ain't gonna be
Yeah.
in their pockets for it. So that was super humbling and made me feel kind of like this is more than us. This is like this is a bigger project than I ever thought it was. So that was really cool, and we kept the brick. So we still.
Wow. That's awesome.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that brick is there as a reminder to us of the goodness of people, because $4,000 from all those people versus one person who threw a brick. I mean, I'll tell you, the 4,000 is what I'm remembering in that case.
Yeah. Well, I guess with that, I want to transfer to um talking about religion and Christianity with you. Um, so I know that you are not religious, and I am afraid that Christianity and religion aren't always portrayed in a positive light. I know that Christianity is very well known, especially here in America. Everywhere you go, whether that be in big cities or small towns, everywhere seems to have a church. Yet still, there are so many people who have a bad taste in their mouth because of religion, often carrying religious trauma and seeing the hypocrisy or judgment within the church. I wanted to share a couple of things that have really impacted me concerning Full Circle Book Co op. The first thing that really made me truly appreciate the environment and the community at Full Circle Book Co op during the crazy year of 2020, um, when the shutdown restrictions were starting to loosen. I remember that I was excited to get back out there and share my poetry again. I remember going to a Christian poetry event and being turned away um, even before I could share some of my poetry because due to the judgment of my explicit language in my poetry and because of the who I was in a relationship with. I was not welcomed at this Christian event. That really irritated me um, because I was excited to go out there and share my poetry again. And Christian events are supposed to be filled with acceptance and sharing together in God's love, but that is not what was being shown at this Christian poetry reading. When I learned about Full Circle Book Co-op, I was hesitant because I have a Christian worldview and I was nervous that my poetry might not be appreciated at this venue that doesn't hold the same Christian views as I do. But to my surprise, I was very welcomed and felt very encouraged. Another thing that really impacted me with Full Circle Book Co-op was the event that I saw in the news when Full Circle Book Co-op was vandalized with hateful expressions and intent. I couldn't help but think this vandalism was probably due to radical religious people or radical conservatives that were homophobic or transphobic or just had hate in their hearts. This broke my heart for Full Circle Book Co-op because I knew how truly loving and inclusive the environment and community that it helped create. It truly made me feel ashamed at the probable perpetrators were probably on the side that is on the side of Christianity. I am really interested in hearing your thoughts, Sean, but first I wanted to share a couple passages in the Bible that that show in Jesus' words the love we are supposed to have for our neighbor. From the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verses 25 through 37. Just then, a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? He said to him, what is written in the law? What do you read there? He answered. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, you have given the right answer. Do this and you will live. But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? Jesus replied, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, a priest was going down the road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. And so, likewise, a Levite, when he saw to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave him to the innkeeper, and said, take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you whatever more you spend. Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? He said, the one who showed him mercy. Jesus said, go and do likewise. And then in Matthew chapter 25, verses 42 to 45. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not give me clothing. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. Then they will answer, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick and in prison, and did not take care of you? Then he will answer them, truly I tell you, just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. I believe a lot of people, especially in America, claim the name of Jesus with Christianity, but I believe a lot of those people do not reflect the love or life of Jesus. So, Sean, in your experience, do you have any positive experiences with Christianity or religion? And then can you share some of the negative experiences that you have with Christianity or religion?
Well, yeah, I mean, I like you said, I'm not particularly well. I'm not religious, anyway, really. Um, Not on a basis of like opposition, but more on a basis of I haven't had any kind of calling. I haven't seen anything that would put me in that direction in terms of like the spiritual and faith-based things. But I mean, on a human level, I mean, like like what you were doing right now, you've got me on somebody who's not a Christian, and you're
Yeah.
asking questions and you're sharing things that I mean that last reading there, I mean, I think that's a humanitarian way of living. You can look after each other if it takes faith to do it, but I believe in like the human aspect that we're able to do it without faith. Um, um, so in terms of like positive, I didn't grow up in a religious household really. I didn't have like it was kind of assumed, you know. I went to a school where there was prayers and stuff, but it wasn't really like I didn't go to church. It wasn't like overtly anything, I didn't like wearing a cross or anything that kind of stuff. So I did, so that my positive aspects come from people like yourself and some of my other friends who are Christian who really embody you know the the words that Christ has said. So I because I think that for all the Bible, it's got a lot of different parables and different things. But I think what the aspect of what Jesus is said has said is it's very simple. You just kind of look after each other, you treat each other well. It's a very it's I mean I don't know if all your listeners are going to agree, but it's a very socialist way of looking at the world. If you have wealth, give it to the poor, give it to the needy. Don't accumulate wealth. That's actually a sin, right? Like greed.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think just to touch upon that brings upon the negative then of um, where we are and you know those lessons have been lost in favor of maybe some other lessons that I think are less important to humanity as a whole, but more important to this sort of selfish greed and creating fear and that kind of stuff that we've seen through rulers and leaders for you know hundreds of years, like so
Yeah.
maybe whatever. But so there's good. I personally, I haven't really had profoundly positive or profoundly negative aspects or like experiences. Um, but you only have to look at the world and to kind of get a feeling that the teachings that these people profess to believe, creating your own Bibles and selling them for, was it like 360,000 times the price or something? I mean, that's greed. That is a deadly sin. So like that's the lesson is gone.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank you for, kind of even being. I know that religion in this is a touchy subject to a lot of people, and I I just think it's so important to have these conversations, and I I started broken worship, well, to, pursue my love of writing and poetry and stuff. But bigger than that, I believe the the Bible message and is really lost on Christians, and we see that. So with we're in a, we're very, they say we're in a Christian nation, right? And we're like, we see the most greedy, most selfish people in America, and I think it's really, and with kind of going back to what happened at Full Circle with that vandalism, because you guys, because your business is like it is inclusive to the marginalized. It's like, what the hell are Christians doing? It says we're supposed to love like Jesus, and like the greatest commandment, some of the Bible is pretty simple: love God with all that you are and love your neighbor as yourself. And that's pretty simple. And I'm it's few and far between are actually living that out.
No, you just got to look at who did Jesus hang out with? You know,
Yeah.
poor. It was like the prostitutes. It was the desolate. It was the lepers. It was like it was. it wasn't, the bank managers,
He wasn't hanging out with the priests or the government officials. He his whole ministry, he was walking on foot, healing people, loving people, and his harshest words were towards the religious and to like were towards the religious. And I think that's lost. People um like I believe that sin is bad and we do need like a save that's but I think oftentimes we forget that the Bible was written to Christians about mainly let's look at ourselves in the mirror before we start criticizing others. Like I think we the first step to real change is looking at ourselves in the mirror. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, on a very fundamental level, I agree on like
Yeah.
on that one because, like, yeah, you don't what be the change you want to see in the world, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Um, so you kind of talked so you but you didn't really grow up into religious faith, but um so so I guess I'm gonna go to this question for I know that often in the poetry and author community and even music community, there are not a lot of Christians, but more often free thinkers and people who carry religious trauma. Are there any stories that you have heard through Full Circle Book Co-op that really point out the hypocrisy or the judgment within the religious communities?
Not particularly in terms of Full Circle Book Co-op,
Or in
because
your personal life, yeah.
um,
Or person people you know, yeah.
I mean, nothing that we haven't already touched upon.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if somebody is a Christian who vote, I don't want to be like it's perhaps I don't know if it's an oversimplification, but it's a very big thing to simplify into one thing. I mean, if you voted for someone like, let's just say Trump, because this is what's happening at the moment, um, and you're a Christian, I find that hypocritical because he's a billionaire, he's accumulated wealth, and he's exploited people. He's using religion literally to make more money with making his own Bibles, like this is to me, I don't those two things don't go together. So that's kind of the modern day thing I see. But on a personal level, no. And as far as the shop, I've actually kind of seen the opposite of it through people like yourself, and we've had multiple sort of faith-based events at our place that perhaps because we're pro LGBTQ plus, because we are because of everything we are and what we stand for, that you might think that they wouldn't want to be a part of what we are, but they have. We've had lots of we've had debates on religion. We've had a group come in who um, sort of discuss what it is. I think they were discussing like LGBT issues in the Bible, but then we had a pastor come in for a few months, um, who tell stories like LGBTQ plus stories from the Bible, and he like, so it's becomes like more inclusive because you're talking about like religious trauma. I mean, maybe a lot of that comes from the idea that these like religious ideas persecute people based upon like their sexuality or gender or whatever. And when you I mean, if you still have that faith, but you're having that sort of conflict, hearing someone like yourself or hearing some of those different groups that I mentioned welcome you in anyway, I mean, I don't have that issue because I don't crave the faith. I didn't grow up with it. But if you grew up with it and it's like it's a core part of you, and that core part of you is being challenged by um, sort of religious dogma that is perhaps one-sided. Um, I think we've managed to be a part of some good stuff there, you know, and like we've welcomed positive changes in. I mean, I know, but the thing is with us, like not everyone would agree with me on that, but that's okay. Like within our shop, because everyone, you know, we all have our own opinions and things. But for me, I think if we can help heal that trauma and help heal somebody um, who just wants to be accepted into the faith that they grew up with, or that they feel that is right for them, um, I don't see how that's bad, you know. So
Yeah.
all in all, I think um, no real personal good or bad, but I've seen more good than bad in my personal life, I'd say, especially
I
through the shop.
yeah, well, that's really good to hear. I'm so glad and grateful that through um more likely someone radical in the religious right who vandalized your store. There were the community came together and showed love for you, for Full Circle in that community. And it's just so I'm really grateful to hear that because I remember I was still kind of when I was kind of still newer to Full Circle, that community. Um, but the love I got when I was, you know, like I kind of talked about with that this Christian poetry event I was at, I was literally kicked out. I
Yeah,
like, and so that that really hurt me, and then you coming to this community who I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be welcomed here now, and then I was. And so that was really awesome. So I'm just really glad to hear that.
me too. Glad that you decided to come and check us out.
Yeah.
It's fun, and you've done some really cool stuff there.
So, I guess kind of, well, to wrap up this kind of thing, this topic, if you could share one thing that you think should be heard or put into practice for Christians or religious people, what would you like them to hear?
Oh, it's a tough one, not being a Christian. I don't really feel like I can say those types of things. I think mostly just what we touched upon. You know, like if that is your belief and that is your faith, um, do what that faith calls you to do, which is love your neighbor. You know, and help the people who need help. Um, you know, don't judge. Like, well, but I mean, somebody else will pull out the passage to disagree with it, and it's a big old book, so
Yeah.
there's a lot going on there. So, but in very general ways, I think just you know be excellent to each other, as Bill and Ted said. You know.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're gonna get into another fun topic, politics. Um, so next I wanted to have a conversation with you about politics in America. Obviously, we are in a very divisive and political time. If there is one thing that President Trump is good at, is he's good at being controversial. I feel like politics in America right now feels like a soap opera instead of politics. I feel like politics should be boring, but instead it seems to like it encompasses so much of the conversation in America and it is so divisive. I know that both sides of the political aisle are important, but they need to work together so that the government can function. I believe that there are fundamental ideals that America should hold on to, but we also shouldn't live in yesterday, and it is always good to progress as a society. Um, Progress is how we make improvements. I believe it is important to have these conversations and to be able to actually listen to each other so that we can hear each other and work with each other. Um, so my question is, what are some aspects? My first question are, um, and actually, in this conversation, I would like to hear a little bit about because the how the government is or like the culture is in your home country of Wales and compared to America. But like so what are some aspects of America that you love and appreciate? And what are some things that you think America, the government, and its citizens should work on and improve? And then kind of counter that, maybe um, compare and contrast with maybe your home country of Wales. I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, well, I would say um, I would never have either been able or I wouldn't have um, I wouldn't have opened a place like Full Circle in Wales. And that's because of one thing I love about America is kind of this, there's a temperament here of maybe changing something, doing something new, um, that you're able to, you know. Um, back in Wales, and this so when I first came here, that's something that I found really attractive. Um, I go back and forth because when it's a double-edged thing because when you're able to do something, it feels like you should do something, and therefore you are burning yourself out, and so and uh, I'd say back in Wales, it's more of a relaxed sort of almost like a stoic atmosphere, um, where it's which has its total benefits as well, and it's really difficult for me to like compare the both because they're so different.
Yeah.
I'm happy I've got to experience both, and I've definitely become a very much more sort of I don't know maybe confident or I'm able to speak like I'm doing with you and like I do at the shop every day about these different subjects that maybe back the person I was, before I moved here, I wouldn't have been able to do. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one to compare
Yeah, that's all, yeah.
because because I had so much weight, positive weight in my in Wales, with family and friends and history and landscape and everything that um, it's so different here. But when I first came here, everything was like the films that I grew up with. I like even seeing like the billboards and stuff as you go and driving down the thing. I mean, it was so filmic and like so it was just a different world. So it was
Yeah.
very exciting when at those days. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've traveled across the states uh, fairly extensively. Seen some beautiful places, some great landscapes, met some great people, and just had some great times, made some amazing memories. And I wouldn't trade that at all. So it's just, yeah, I don't know. I'm still experiencing it. So
Yeah.
while I'm still experiencing it, it's hard to summarize it.
Yeah. So then what do you think here in America the government and maybe some of the citizens should work on and improve?
Oh, oh, it's gonna get me in trouble, but um, well, I think. the big one for me is um, quality of life, relaxation, um, taking time to do things that you want to do, whether that's your creative projects. That could just be, I'm busy tonight, but busy can be doing absolutely nothing, like laying on the couch, watching a movie, or anything like that. Whatever you need to do to work on, to like make sure you're okay up here, um, that's okay, like it's just and I don't know, there's like you talked about earlier, like sort of there's like a loneliness going on, especially with social media and all this. So this maybe I grew up without social media, so I don't know how what that is like for a younger person. I'm nearly 40, so like for a person of like 50, I can't imagine. But our community that I was grew up on was like amazing. It was so good. Like all my like best friends that I made back home, we're all still friends. We still hang out whenever I go back and still create music, and it's just it's all still there. So I never had that experience of that direct loneliness that I think a lot of people feel now. So maybe just get off the social medias.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to have them for the shop, but I wouldn't have them otherwise.
I
But
am so thankful that I grew up in the 90s. I loved the 90s. I loved the cartoons of the 90s. I just loved everything about the 90s and actually having, playing football with the neighbors. Not I last thing I thought about was like, you know, if I, who I'm going to be married to or whatever. I was actually able to be a kid,
right, yeah,
like I was able to, and I always like, I just remember like sneaking me and my buddy Luke being in the hot tub in our little neighborhood, sneaking a beer and pretending to trying to pretend we didn't eat it, and and like I don't know, like I feel like we're as a kid we're supposed to just be out allowed to mess up and allowed to mess up and not have everything recorded and just
yeah,
be a kid. I don't
no,
even
yeah.
in our 20s, like why we should be allowed to mess up and not have worry about everything recorded or I don't know.
Well, we're always learning. It's a constant evolution of consciousness, and this stuff. The main thing I could say is through the shop, I guess. But like, I learn things every week that like I shouldn't have done that the week before. And you just got to be kind of like humbled by it, move on, and do better next time. Um, so yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine, and maybe that's a time. Well, it's a time that's gone, but um, but all I can do is let people know what I did and see if they can do that too. We do try, like I say, we're all ages. We've got these punk shows coming on and lots of different types of stuff that I don't know, maybe it's not real, but I just like the idea that people could form friendships and, be less lonely through things like that. Because, yeah, there's a lot of stuff in my life that, friends have helped me through.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, so like that's just a general human consciousness thing. But in terms of the country, and I mean, I wouldn't say one thing specific to us. I think it's more of a time thing, like time across the world these days. Is just
Yeah.
try to like relax, meditate if you've got to meditate, whatever you got to do to de-stress. And it's not always easy. It's not because I fail at it every day, but there's a part of me that's always so like all these books behind me, they're all like Buddhist meditation books
I,
and philosophies, and that I studied, and so I try, but the world is it's tough and strong, and with all this like bombardment that we face every day with like and it's a specific tactic to confuse us and make us. I mean, it makes us more lonely. Oh, hello,
yeah.
lovely. Yeah, so I don't know, just relaxation, if you whatever by any means. Oh, what we who we got?
This is my cat named Gravy.
Gravy. Hello.
I have another one, but he's not gonna be over here. But yeah, so um, do you think it's possible with how divided things are for Americans and just humans to work together and be united again? And are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future?
Hmm. Um, I'm pretty pessimistic about the past, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, we've always been at war. There's always been something going on in all countries. Um, but it's your small base of people that make it worthwhile to live in, you know. And obviously, then there's like huge issues that I hope we can get together for, you know, to like make positive change. It is extremely difficult to know what to do in these days. I just mentioned like the confusion aspect, you know, like without going in like all the details. I saw an interview the other day with Steve Bannon, who was Trump's right hand man back in the day, and he's talking about this. He's talking about like this is how you sort of come through with some of these policies. You just bombard people with so much crazy stuff that they don't know what's true and what's not. And that is exactly what's happening now. So I think like focus on your specific cause or causes, you know, and make all the positive change you can in those things. Because if you try to do it all, I think you're gonna go loopy, you know. So like, um, but you can make positive change, and you can help out a friend. You can so many things you can do. Um, Volunteer somewhere. You can join and you can send money to the ACLU or whatever. Depending on where you want that positive message to be heard. Um, but look after yourself as well. Because if something happens to you as a person, you can't do anything for other people either.
Yeah.
As far as the positive pessimist thing, I mean, do I think it's going to get better? Probably not. Are there ways to make it better for everybody? Yeah, for sure. Like there's always
Yeah.
ways to make it better. Um,
Are just out of curiosity, what's your what's your thought process or your what are you thinking about with this world of AI coming
oh,
that's inevitably coming?
oh, it's another thing that like humans can't control themselves. With this kind of stuff. Um, I don't. I don't think it's a good. I mean, yeah, there's that aspect that it could cure cancer and things like that, which would, find great. Um, so they'll be good and they'll be bad,. But they'll just be extremes. It started off, I know, with like in terms of art, like using other people's art. So that's bad, and it is. And
It makes me worried about the future of my writing. It's like with GBT or whatever. It's like people are going to start wondering if I actually wrote something, because I have no interest in, having a ghostwriter or whatever. And now it's like, and then you have to compete against it. Like, if you want to, I. I don't know. I think a lot about in the Old Testament, the Tower of Babel. We're trying to climb our way to be equal to God, and like I obviously there'll be cool aspects of it, like I don't know. I think there'll be good things about it, but a lot of it scares the fuck out of me. Yeah,
well, the possibilities of how bad it could get,
yeah,
that's scary. Will it get like that? I don't know, but it could, like it really could.
yeah,
But I mean, what way could also just be, you know, your Google search gets quicker or something like that.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it could be so mundane that it's nothing, but but yeah, again, in that aspect of like positivity for the future, I mean, I'm not a pessimist or a cynicist by any means, really, but I also don't fully trust the people who are in charge of these things. So,
Yeah.
I'm a humanist, um, as a general rule, but you know, it only takes one selfish person can overtake thousand people who are non-selfish, and like create that greed aspect and that trickles down and blah blah blah. So I don't know. But it's not going to be awesome, I don't think. Like even if the best case scenario, and it's like what's coming, you can like write down what movie you want to see, and all of a sudden it pops up within
Yeah.
10 seconds. Like that's how good it's gonna get. Like that's the best we can hope for. Well, and the cancer thing, obviously, but the yeah, I don't know. I just a kind of final note on it for me at least. I think the element of distrust that's already started is going to get so much worse when you don't know, because like that sort of blanking and what's it called when like so like like there was a thing of like President Obama talking, and it
Oh, a surrogacy, a surrogate or something, like like it's not them or something.
not them. It's like it's just a voice, and it looks and so and
Yeah.
like at this point you can still kind of tell, but give it 5 years, I think you won't be able to tell. And with the way viral things are these days, it's already bad with just like meme culture. Like it's gonna get so much worse, I think.
I
So
think
don't
I
worry.
think a movie that was super ahead of its time was I, Robot.
I never saw that, but I've heard things about it. Yeah.
You should really you should really watch it. It's like I swear it's like because it's like having a self-driving car, but then it was like you can have an option to get the wheel, but and then like having personal robots and then they turn against you. I don't know. It's a you should watch it. It
Is
was
that
super good.
is that Philip K. Dick who wrote that? Do you know?
Well, the I'm not sure. I don't recall who wrote it, but Will Smith is the main actor.
Yeah, yeah. I'd have
So
to look it up because I know some of those old sci-fi guys, like Philip K. Dick and Isaac Asimov and all this, they predicted all this stuff like 60 years ago. Like everything we're living in now, they're in those books, and that's like you see the movie Total Recall, like even that to me back in the day was like very futuristic, but now it's like that's there's a scene in that movie where he walks through like a screen like at an airport, and it's just you see the skeleton of him walking through to see, and it's like that is just so commonplace these days. But when I was growing up, that wasn't the norm,
yeah,
Like it's a slow moving process, but it's actually really quick in terms of like a lifetime, I
yeah.
don't know. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. So before we start wrapping up, did you have a poem that you would like to read?
I've got something. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's kind of a goofy one. It's I got a new book almost finished here. Oh, yeah. And it's called the book's called Smile at Night. And I've kind of been working on it on and off for about 4 years since kind of pandemic-y kind of days, really. There's some pandemic style issues in there, um,
You'll have
but
to let me know when that's out. I want to get it.
yeah, I've probably got about two or three more like decent poems to put in there, and then I think it'll be ready to go. It's probably going to be about 150 pages, something like that. I'm going to try and make it a bit of a chunkier book than my chapbook, so that's why it's taken me so long.
Nice. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's kind of a semi goofy one, but I can read it to you if you want.
Yeah.
It's called Resume. All right. Curmudgeon dreaming French onion, Fallaheen eye roaming cart of body with a broken wheel, but it still gets to where it's meant to, sort of, late. But the sun rises tomorrow again anyway, so it's a moon waiting kind of time. I have no healthy heroes or bones, some fresh ideas, none that will pay the rent, but a wheelbarrow philosophy, a work history of sprawling and hammock, a canoe under the sun and between rocks on the way to an unknown dock. There is dub playing somewhere at my feet. I would give you references, but you've already seen those Leslie Nielsen movies. Would you prefer some John Prine lyrics? I could send you old photographs of families found in Parisian flea markets if that helps. The best I can offer is an itch or two, but I won't drive there. Perhaps we can negotiate wages. I would like to be paid in toad. Wait to be discussed, but be ready. And I would require a sandwich for my friend. If these demands cannot be met, I will quit poetry and pursue a life of police officery and mayoral candidateism, which, as you know, leads to a lack of paint. Should you like to paint the town red, hire me for the job. I will break things and call it wabi sabi, and my laughter will be echoed in the city's parking lot so that every late night party maker is cheerier, hopefully. And we will end war every hour we are alive. It will be difficult to contact me. I might be having breakfast in a hut and be ignoring your phone calls. I will not turn up to work, nor exert myself in any way past drawing small animals on guest check pads. I hope this finds you well. Regards, Leonard Cohen.
I I like that. I really like that.
It's goofy.
Yeah, I know that's, but it has a lot in it. It's cool. I like that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's a bit of fun. Yeah, I
Um,
don't know when that'll be out. That'll be hopefully sometime in the spring, maybe, if I can
cool.
get it together.
You'll have to let me know when that's out. So
Cool.
but yeah, so thank you so much for not only being on this podcast, for being willing to have this conversation, but also for being my friend in everything you do with Full Circle Book Co-op. Thank you. And then thank you all for listening for your support, encouragement. Oh no, no. Okay. Well, thank you for your sorry. So thank you for your support, encouragement, and love to you that you give to fellow authors, poets, artists, and standing up for the marginalized communities. What you are doing with Full Circle Book Co-op means so much for a lot of people. And I hope that eventually I can become more involved again in the open mic nights and just be able to come more and show my support. Life can be crazy and is so busy, but I just know that I stand with you and support you. Is there anything that you would like to plug or share before we wrap things up?
Well, the book, I just plugged the book, I guess. I don't want to be greedy, but yeah, I mean, just we've got a ton of events. We usually the best way to find out is through, like Facebook or Instagram, those two things. Or you could just pop into the shop, chat with us, and if anyone wants to put on an event, um, come and chat, and we'll see what we can do. And yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to you, bud, for doing what you do because I think what you do is important and very unique. I've never seen anyone do as much as you do for the cause you believe in. So it's cool.
I appreciate that. I really do. And like I said, I I believe there'll be some life changes this year, and I'm hoping, like you said, hopefully there's time I can slow down and enjoy life a little more, and hopefully I can stop in more and come visit. So I would really like that. We'll see how things go, but yeah, so anyways, for everyone listening, I want to thank you all for tuning into this episode of the Broken Worship Podcast. I hope that you enjoyed this awesome interview with my friend Sean Lidster of Full Circle Book Co-op. If you would like to help support Broken Worship, I would love it if you would check out the Worship website, which is www.broken-worship.com. All six of my published books are on there, as well as dope Broken Worship merch. Another easy way to support Broken Worship and to stay up to date with all things new for Broken Worship, please like, share, and subscribe on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify. All of this information will be provided in the description below. Um, Thanks again, and I love you all, and I hope you have a great February. So be sure to let everyone you know what we do here in the Broken Worship community. Here in the Broken Worship community, we remember, even in our brokenness, we have a reason to worship. Thank you, and God bless. Thanks, Sean, for being here.